knows everything, but everyone knows something no one else knows, including you. Welcome to the other side of things. I'm your host, Dr. Michael DeMaria, and for 35 years, I've been a guide of the soul. On the other side of things, we explore alternative perspectives on challenging topics, ranging from love, sex, death, and madness to dream work, breath work, and other cutting-edge healing modalities. We live on a precipice as a species. So let's jump in. Welcome to another episode on the other side of things. And I'm really thrilled to have you here. And I'm excited about our guest who has become a friend and a colleague and a spiritual soul brother. So without further ado, I want to introduce him. Today on the other side of things, I'm joined by Andrew Ecker, healer, recovery guide, author, and founder of Drumming Sounds. Andrew's work bridges ancient rhythm-based healing traditions with modern peer-reviewed wellness practices, supporting individuals and communities across recovery spaces, healthcare settings, and grassroots circles. Rooted in lived experience, disciplined prayer, and service, his approach in life honors rhythm not as performance, but as medicine, a way of restoring connection to body, ancestors, and spirit. This conversation today, I'm excited about, will explore recovery as initiation, drumming as a call home, and what it means to live a prayered life in a world hungry for meaning. It's not a conversation about technique, but about remembering and walking one another back home. Andrew, thanks for being here, man. It's just an honor and joy to finally have you come part of the other side of things.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to have this conversation with you and your audience, and hopefully be in a place of support and encouragement to the community. I would like to introduce myself as best as I can in the traditional language of my ancestors, and then also the contemporary here. So, as a customary way that I've been taught in the sweat lodge and in ceremony, I always like to begin with this. So go ahead and introduce myself. So Dagote She Inde, Andrew Ecker Yenishe, Adonna E Nishinigi E Inde Nishe, Irish Bashachin, Inde Dashache, German Dashanali, Kote Goe E Tishli E, Portland, Oregon Nisha, Shama E Kathy Lindsay Woye, Shaza E Del Ecker Wole. My name is Andrew Ecker. My mother, Kathy Lindsay. My father, Dale Ecker. My mother's mother, Elva Gallegos, Apache woman from New Mexico. She grew up in a little town called Capitan, right outside the Mescalero Reservation. Although my ancestral lines go back to the Madera Valley of Texas and Chihuahua, Mexico. The Apaches from this area of the border are called Lapon Band Apache. My father's mother, Evelyn Beatty, an Irish woman from Pennsylvania, she was very proud that our ancestor William Beatty fought in the Revolutionary War to establish this country. So I do consider myself a son of the Revolution. My mother's father, Leroy Lindsay, a Korean and Vietnam War veteran, and my father's father, Wayne Ecker, a World War II veteran. I have a daughter, Bailey. I have a son, Peyton. I have a beloved fiance named Monica. I was born in the ancestral land of the Multnomah, Clackamas, and Willamette in Portland, Oregon, although I currently reside in the ancestral land of the Akmel Atam, the Peepash, and the Hohokam here in Mesa, Arizona. I'm very grateful to be here with you, and just super excited to share and encourage the community as a way of helping people remember. You know, I really believe that there was a time when I was in council with the Creator, and I said to the Creator, you know, I want to come back to the earth. I want to help them connect to the drum. I want to help them
Mm.
remember themselves, remember who they are as earthlings. And the Creator said, well, great, we got a good assignment for you. And I believe I agreed to that assignment. And fortunately, you know, I'm able to live with a relationship to generational incarceration, generational substance use disorder, and learning to navigate that. As I said in the agreement with the Creator, you know, send me there. And he said, well, you're going to watch your mom die of a cocaine overdose. You know, you're going to watch your father die of cirrhosis of the liver. You're going to use heroin with your dad. You're going to, you know, shoplift with your mom to support her habit. And all those things, you know, are a part of my life story and the way that I show up in the community today as a person who has lived experience and as a person that helps others navigate not only their own personal relationship with mental health concerns, but also understand how their families are dealing with mental health concerns. And that part of my life has been a true blessing, and really how we grounded into relationship with one another. And bringing the drum into healthcare settings, bringing the voice of Mother Earth, this heartbeat, this rhythm back to the people. It's been a life calling, and I felt very encouraged by what you shared, because it really is such a catalyst for me feeling like I am being seen. You know, working in some of the darkest places of the human condition, and memory care and skilled nursing and psychiatric lockdowns and prisons, and doing this work that isn't the fancy retreats to the expensive luxury retreat centers in Bali, or any of this great stuff that so many shamanic practitioners are doing, but really just going into the gritty, dense places of human condition and sharing that love of music and community. And it does feel sometimes a little isolating. It feels sometimes that, is this going to be valued? And particularly in this current political climate, with the devaluing of so many of our mental health interventions, and so much of the government turning from wellness based, evidence based, non pharmaceutical practices, and limiting research in these endeavors. It's just really a time where platforms like yours are important for voices like mine. And I'm very grateful to be able to share in the miracle with you.
God bless you, brother. Just so moved by all of that, and so honored. And as soon as you go into sharing who you are and connected to, the ancestors and your grandparents and the sacred seven practice, and before we jump in even more, I just want to name something for our listeners. I came to your work not as like curious professional, but as a fellow two-legged that was suffering and in need, and you walked me and helped walk me through a very difficult time in my life, and later was fortunate to complete the Sacred Seven training with you, and your book Sacred Seven, for anybody out there. It's just a powerful read, and just as you shared just a little bit about where you've come from and what you've overcome, it's so moving to me. And what surprised me most in our work was it was like a remembering something deep inside my heart, and it's been 34 years this year that I did my first Vision Quest, a dry fast with my native teacher, and it 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 really broke my heart open, that I connected to some things that I had forgotten and was not as fully connected to, and part of that was from that very first time I reached out to you. And it was just a free discovery call for 20 minutes. And we spent like 2.5 hours. And God bless you. You were so generous and so supportive. And immediately we were dropping into these deep places. And part of it was you started us off, and whenever we've worked together, you have started us off with a prayer, and your introduction, of course, is a prayer already. But I was wondering if you would be willing to, just because I love our listeners to hear the power of when you set the intention and help us drop into this deep place that creator made for us before creation, beyond creation, and that multidimensional place that we can rest in, and help guide our talk together, if you're open to doing that.
I would love that. The place of prayer is a place of connectivity, and it's a place that's welcome to all people. The agnostic, the atheist, the person that's struggling with understanding spirituality, the hungry, all are welcome in this prayer place. Christian, Jew, Hindu, Muslim, the Rastas, the old ways, the old gods. In the Apache, it's Yusin, and I just want to welcome everybody into this place of agreement, a place in which we allow ourselves to rest. And Father, Mother, Creator, we thank you for this opportunity to come into this prayer place, a place that was established before the creation, before time, before. We thank you for giving us this place to connect. Thank you for allowing for us to feel the blanket of gravity as we rest into the feeling of support that the earth has granted us. We thank you for the air, the water, the fire. We thank you for our moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunties, uncles, cousins, sons, daughters. We thank you for the four-legged and the one-legged. We thank you for our relational spirituality and how you call us to this place of guidance. I thank you for technology bringing us together in this moment and allowing for your spirit to permeate and to transcend the container of this vehicle of unification into that spiritual place that allows for the displacement and the manifestation of the energies that allow for us to walk in the authority of love to brilliantly shine. Creator, thank you for this timeline that we are living in. Thank you for the feelings of disconnect and the struggles that have come forward politically, socially, spiritually, emotionally. Thank you for drawing us together in this time, bringing forward the remnant that have been called in accordance with your will to break the barriers and the captivity of the organizations that would try to keep us from living our sovereignty. Creator, bless us with a knowing, that deep knowing that allows for vision, creativity, imagination, and the power to bring us together to guide. And I loosen us now to this conversation that we would be used today by you, that we would share beauty in the words that we connect to and in the heart space that we hold, that you would grant us this moment in time as a spiritual moment in time in which we can fully reconcile ourselves to you. Beauty above, beauty below, beauty beside, beauty in front, beauty behind, beauty within. I am, we are made beautiful again. Oh.
Aho, aho. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I miss hearing you do that. Thank you so much. And you've helped me deepen my own prayerful life. And, and every day, yeah, I shared with you after my dry fast, my teacher had me go to the 7 directions and do a prayer with water, because the value and the power of water. And now I add your sharing about that as I'm bowing to each direction. I'm bowing to my grandmothers and my grandfathers and my mother and my father and then the inner child, right? The within direction. Too far to go into today, but again, get Sacred 7, and you'll know what I'm talking about, and you'll be so moved by Andrew's amazing journey. And you brought a couple of things beautiful in the prayer, and one phrase which I just really love that you introduced me to, which is relational spirituality. And to me, that goes so deep, because the other piece is having a relationship with our suffering, having a relationship with our history, having a relationship with even those who have hurt us. And I would love to hear you kind of share a bit more of your understanding of what's so powerful about relational spirituality and what it is for you.
It's a great question. I came into my red road almost 20 years ago. Prior to that, I would consider myself a spiritual person and even at times a religious person. I did work in the inner city as a pastor, picking kids up for church on a bus. I grew a ministry from 3 kids to over 200. And I went through a crisis of faith. And in that crisis of faith, I lost my church community due to a divorce that I was going through. And um, my ex wife was dealing with a lot of mental health issues and substance use disorder and some serious stuff, hospitalizations. It was just a really rough time. And the community basically fell apart that we had created. And I found myself in need of spirituality. I found myself in need of a community that I could really pray with, cry with, be with. And like I said, almost 20 years ago, I went to my first sweat lodge. And in that sweat lodge, I learned this concept of all my relations. And as a person who was really ignorant of the idea of having relationships with all parts of my reality, I began to
Mm,
question the universe. I began to question the creator. Well, what does it mean to be in all my relations? And as I sat with that in the sweat lodge, and as I sat with that prayer, this illumination of living in relationship with these aspects of myself began to emerge. And the permission slip that comes from that authority of relational spirituality, that is one that I feel is truly about living as an earthling, a sovereign being,
mm,
living as a spiritual being that isn't tied to the captivity of religion or the fear of doing something wrong, but instead fully coming to embrace the universe in this path of spirituality out of love.
mm.
And in that place of truly loving myself, I can say that I have a relationship with PTSD. I can say that I have a relationship with situational schizophrenia, with depression, with anxiety, with all these different components of my reality. And in that navigation tool, I'm the one that creates the boundaries and also creates intimacy. And what do I mean by having boundaries and intimacy in relational spirituality? Well, this is really the place of authority when it comes to diving deep into our anxiety. What does it mean to truly sit with that feeling? What does it mean to research and study different aspects of anxiety, different aspects of depression? What does it mean to talk and counsel with friends and mentors about these different layers of the human experience? This is what I mean when I talk about diving into the intimacy of the relationship with these mental
Yes.
health concerns. And then there's the boundary, which is another aspect. And you can really relate this back to the practice of the beauty way, which is the feminine,
Yes.
the intimate way, the way of honoring and way of going into emotional intelligence, and then the masculine, which is the linear protection way.
Yeah.
This is a calling that's in our traditional understanding of the feminine being our left side, the masculine being our right side. In the sweat lodge, we're taught bless your left side first, bless your right side second, bless your heart, which is that embrace of the inner child in my understanding. And as I learned to live in relationship with these aspects of myself, what was beautiful is that the behaviors that were associated with them began to diminish. The behaviors began to wash away
Mm,
as I began to look at these parts of myself with a relational understanding. For years of my life, Michael, I was just captivated by emotion. Growing up with compound PTSD and so many deep, dark experiences as a youth in a home where uh, my job as a kid was to clean the stems and the seeds out of the cannabis because
mm.
that was, back when cannabis had stems and seeds, first of all. And secondly, because, that was what my culture was in my home,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it was a culture of we're using these substances as an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
The government was always against us. The world was against us. I remember going out and being a part of organized crime with my mom and her crew of shoplifters, and my dad and his crew of shoplifters. These weren't people that were violent or mean or even horrible people. They just had a disease, and they looked at the system as against them. So it was like whatever we could do to get back at them. Unfortunately, they're the ones with guns. and being involved in no-knock warrants and having guns drawn on me and my sister, and my mom beat up in front of me by the police. When you live with that density of reality, you get sucked into the gravity of that. And those
Absolutely.
behaviors began to manifest in my life and leading me down a road of heroin addiction, cocaine addiction, and then subsequently, um, when I stopped using, which has been, almost 30 years now, but when I stopped using, there was still a vacuum and a void.
Yes.
I filled it with religion for a portion of my life. I still didn't have the relational understanding
Mm.
until I was in the sweat lodge. Even though the pastors in church used to say, you got to have a relationship with
Right.
God, I didn't know what that meant. I honestly didn't. I thought it was like an in ordinances. If I did this, if I gave at church, if I went out and witnessed to the unsaved, if I won souls, if I supported this political candidate, which I did. I was involved in evangelical Christianity, and I helped a governor run, or a candidate run for governor. I mean, I was deep into that world,
Yeah.
and I was living by those ordinances, and yet the vacuum that was inside of me was still a causality of anxiety, depression, not feeling like I could fit in, not feeling like I was wanted by the community, rejection, all of these things. Yet when I came to this revelatory space of really saying, well, what does it mean to live in relationship? It was like a weight lifted off of me. And I started to live in
Mhm.
relationship with that little boy that was hurt by his family. I started to
Uh-huh.
live in relationship with that adult that thought heroin was my best solution. I started living in relationship with the schizophrenia, with the depression, with the anxiety, with the feelings of, was I having a psychotic break, or was I having a spiritual awakening? I mean, all of these
Right.
things began to surface. And as they surfaced, I had the tool to navigate them, which
Right.
was intimacy and boundary, protection and beauty, the feminine, the masculine, this power that really is woven into the fabric of indigenous earth-based communities from around the world.
Yeah.
There's a deep knowing, even in language, of the feminine and the masculine, with these
Yes.
these language models that honor that. And that practice of relational spirituality is really at the heart of everything I do now,
Yeah.
whether it's drumming, working in the hospitals, working in one-on-one coaching sessions, setting up retreats, all of the different stuff that we're now able to offer the community. It's really about relationship.
Yeah. Beautiful. Just so beautifully expressed. Because I think that is what is missing in our culture, and I've studied some indigenous languages, and the same kind of idea, and the idea even when we write, homitakuasan, or all my relations, it's hyphenated too, right? So it's this idea that native languages are based more verb based, not noun. They don't have that subject object separation, because it's also honoring there is animism, that everything has a soul, everything is alive, everything has energy, everything is moving. And so we're looking at how everything is interacting with everything else, what's arising with something else, what's co-arising. And I think what I was so moved in our actual work, it's one thing to say those things abstractly, but when we get down to, like, having a relative or family member who's going through mental health concerns or struggling with severe things that we might call schizophrenia or bipolar or addiction, that when you're allowing yourself to look at the relational part, um, like I think so often we talk about like co-occurring, like addiction and psychiatric, but the missing piece is that there's also psychosocial or relational trauma, and to help someone be able to say, wait a minute, do you have a relationship with your own? I remember one of the metaphors I loved was, helping me deal with a family member of, like, instead of trying to fix their, like, if they're pushing a grocery cart with a busted wheel, right? Instead of trying to fix their wheel, share about times when you had to gross your car with a busted wheel. And so that idea is right there is relational. So I'm going to, how do I struggle with my own emotional concerns, my own suffering? And if I don't have a relationship with my suffering, how I'm going to connect with you and your suffering? And it was such a, it's so different than you're going to get by going to most therapists, doctors, or, and just because I watched you breathe it and live it. And the other thing I love about it is it, when you're dealing with a relational approach to spirituality and helping and peer support and guiding others and being what I think of as a guide of the soul, you don't have this set of rules that you're applying. It's all about, it's more kind of Buddhist, the idea of, um, what is the right action at this moment? How am I going to relate with this person about this situation in this moment? And that makes it much more, I think, this idea when you talk about sovereignty or the ability to trust your heart. And I truly feel one of the most powerful things that make us human is our capacity to improvise and kind of be playful while also honoring our sovereignty and boundaries. So I would just like, anything else you want to say about that, but I think that's such a message that I wanted to have people hear you. And I think that's also even in your prayers. There's such a, number one, you're naming all your relations literally, but you're also having a real touching, emotional, personal relationship creator. You hear it in your voice. You hear the intimacy there. And it reminds me, the last thing I'll say, my Buddhist teacher, I had a Buddhist Zen teacher passed last year, but he, for 40 years, and he brought me a lot of sanity. And he quoted Dojin, who is a Zen poet and teacher. And he said, enlightenment was being able to have intimacy with all things. Isn't that beautiful? And
Yeah.
so I just, when you were talking, I all of a sudden I had that memory of that. So I don't know, wherever that hits, or wherever you, if you want to riff off of that or see where that might take you.
There's this part of me that comes forward in the work in institutional medicine.
Yeah.
And I use some language that the audience maybe needs to understand. And that language is a language that relates to energy. I believe that
Mm,
energy is at the heart of so much of the conversation, including what I call emotional density.
right.
So, emotional density is the experiences that create this compacting of emotional trauma that are fortified through the always never statements, the have to, need to, must, the I could have, I should have, I would have. All of these in association with these really dense experiences create a compound energy, and turn that energy will create the gravity that allows for behaviors to manifest. Now, how does this relate to institutional medicine? Well, it's very important because inside of institutional medicine, there's an agreement of sickness. And in that agreement of sickness, there's a density that has an access point through intimacy and empathy. When a person that is a clinician walks into an environment without the ability to navigate energy, they are truly in a state of ignorance to the possibilities
Yes.
that are able to manifest within that environment. And working in these institutional settings, I can tell you that the peer model, this happened to me today. Today I was in a memory care, and this is a memory care that is really heavily sedated, and I would say lower on the scale of mindful intention. So, what does a scale of mindful intention look like in a memory care unit? People are asking, well, my mom's in memory care and I go in there and, nobody's doing anything. But there are memory cares where there's activity, there's a personal understanding of people's space. These are trained individuals that are really asserting themselves into bettering the behaviors of the community members that are living with a relationship to Alzheimer's or dementia. This place is a place where in the middle of the drum circle, the nurses will come over and grab a person and take them out of the circle without acknowledging me as the facilitator, acknowledging the nurses, acknowledging the room, looking at
Wow.
what's going on. We're doing a guided imagery meditation, a sound, breath work. We're doing these things inside of the container of the circle, and they're completely oblivious to it. Or else coming in and just grabbing the stick from the community member, just banging on the drum. I mean, I'm witnessing these things inside of this space. And even in that environment, the power of intimacy and empathy will prevail. And how does that
Mm.
look? Going into that environment, I can feel a level of disconnect in my body. Now, I want to get into intimacy with that. I want to look at the loneliness that's emerging inside of me as the facilitator, because in
Mm.
that access point, I can give the truthful experience to the circle. So I say to the group, thank you so much for coming out of your rooms today and participating. I want to let you know that I was feeling some kind of way before I got here.
Mm.
I was feeling really a deep loneliness inside of my body. And when I began to see you smile and play the drum, all of that went away. Can I just thank you for being here today, for
Ah,
turning off Judge Judy and coming out of your room? And you know
beautiful.
something, Michael? When I do that, when I look at the residents and I say thank you for helping me, you know what happens? I see life happen. I
Yeah.
see people look at me and say thank you. And not just a thank you that you say when somebody opens the door. I'm talking a resonant thank you that I can feel in my body.
Mm.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
And we have missed this in healthcare.
Yes.
We have missed what it means to bring our community back to the circle, to mend the hoop. And thankfully, there's organizations that value that practice, that are able to step into a place of education. I'm educating healthcare workers all the time on what it means to be in a mindful practice, what it means to give yourself permission. I just had a client reach out to me and I said, at the last 15 minutes of our circle, we do sound medicine. And I would love for staff members that are stressed to come in and sit down, take a break. You are in a place of community, and I'm facilitating community here. This is a place where you, as an overworked caregiver, can rest and
Mm.
feel like you're given to.
Right.
We are a community and the circle is giving to us, the circle is leading us. And it's so important today that we, as individuals that are called to the path of our spirituality, are resilient in our effort of showcasing the brilliance of love and gratitude.
Mm.
And as we walk in that, I have seen the power of manifestation and displacement, because displacement is a part of manifestation that many people fail to even have recognition of.
Yeah.
If I was to say to you, okay, the cup is filled, it's always filled. What is it filled with before you pour water in it? Of course, it's filled with air. So we have to displace the air in order to manifest the water. We have to displace the energies of sickness. We go into those institutions with a mindful intention of holding the metaphysical architecture of the optimal state of human design.
Mm.
I'm going in there understanding that every single one of those persons has potential. Every
Yes.
single one of
Yes.
them has
Yes.
the ability to live a quality of life.
Yes.
If I didn't believe that about myself, I would be in prison right now, like my
Mm.
parents. I would be in prison like
Mm.
my ancestors. I would be living the destructive forces of addiction and schizophrenia and bipolar and all of these isms today. But
Yes.
I had that knowing inside of myself that I'm going to believe that there's an opportunity for a person to survive generational incarceration, to survive generational addiction, and to live in relationship with schizophrenia, post traumatic stress, depression, anxiety. And I have found liberation in that. So if I'm going to believe that for myself, I want to extend that to the world that I'm working with. And I also want to extend it to the people that are dealing with the 9 to 5 work hard, retire reality. We have
Yes.
people that are so alienated, that
Mm.
are living in multi-million dollar homes right now, suffering in their depression because
Yes.
they haven't actually felt what it means to give and what it means to receive. You were talking about a psychosocial model of intimacy and wellness. And what happens when we drum together? We
Mm.
are giving and we're also receiving.
Yes.
We're giving to the groove, we're giving to the beat, we're connecting to Mother Earth, but we're also receiving that energy from others. We're receiving that beauty of connectivity. And
Oh,
in that, we are meeting those emotional needs. We're gravitating towards a space in which the fullness of the human condition is able to fully be embraced, fully be witnessed. And man, is it exciting to be able to share that with a world that desperately needs it. And whether it's working in drug and alcohol treatment facilities, which is one of my main callings, I was at a drug and alcohol treatment facility 2 weeks ago. And here's this like middle-aged kind of, he's got the Tupac shirt on, the gold necklace, and he's here in the middle of this drum circle, and at the end of it, I could just see him smiling and having a great time. And I play the gong. Our model is it's an evidence-based wellness intervention. So we're doing um, interventions inside of the container. So we're doing
nice.
breath work, we're doing visualization, we're doing intention, we're utilizing the ancient practices in a 1 hour to 1.5 hour model that really is creating key touch points within all of the individuals, giving them permission to keep their eyes open while we're
Mm.
doing a breath. I was told as a person dealing with PTSD to close my eyes by a yoga practitioner, and I thought, how are they able to close their eyes?
Right. Right.
I looked
Sure.
around at the room and seen everybody with their eyes closed and think, I can't close my eyes. There must be
Right.
something wrong with me.
Aw.
And this is what goes on in the mind of people.
Yes.
They feel like their fear, their PTSD is something that they've done wrong.
Right.
And in a true trauma informed approach, we're asking permission for those delicate moments of imparting wellness. When we say to a group, there's a permission slip to close your eyes. And if you feel uncomfortable closing your eyes, I want you to know that you can keep your eyes open.
Great.
But with practice, you can feel safe enough.
Yeah.
I struggled closing my eyes. Again, back to that peer model.
Yes.
Honestly saying, or for a person who maybe hasn't experienced that, I want you to know that I feel I'm in a place where I am going to hold safety in my heart, and I'll have my eyes open so that you're safe.
I love that.
These are approaches
Yes.
that we can give to medical practitioners and can help them be able to really facilitate an experience. So back to the middle-aged man coming off the streets, he listens to the flute, the gong, the chimes, and the singing bowl. Last 15 minutes, we do a sound medicine. And after that, the whole facial expression has changed. The body has changed. It's just
Yeah.
like full nervous system reset. And I know you know what I'm talking about as a sound medicine practitioner. And he said something to me. He said, I grew up in church. My grandma took me to church every Sunday, and I have never experienced anything like that in my life. He was like, man,
Mm.
my whole body changed. He's like,
Mm.
I can't even put words around that.
Mm.
I can't tell you what that's done for me. And listening to a person have that sort of transformational spiritual experience inside of a drug and alcohol treatment facility, that seed is planted. And regardless of the struggles, regardless of what happens in that person's life, they know that the truest truth of the spiritual condition of humanity is inside of that. It's totally contrary to substance use, because
Oh,
once you taste the brilliance of spirituality, once we have that in our lives, and once we truly create relationship, there's a hunger and desire for that. Your body wants that. And of course, the week after and the week after, and until his insurance ran out, he was telling me what a great class it was and how he
mhm.
looked forward to our drum circle every week. And I want to replicate this. I want more practitioners out there learning the drumming sounds protocol, learning the skills that I paid for with the struggle of childhood post-traumatic stress. I
Yeah.
paid for with the suffering of my parents. I think back to this witness inside of me that says, how many times was my mom raped in a drug house to give me this
Mm.
gift, man? Because her pain is so great, you know,
Oh,
and what
wow.
she went through in her life and how she wasn't able to have me and how she had to lose her children because of the way that this world looks at people with substance use disorder.
Right.
It just means that we can do better. We
Oh,
can do better. And, I'm hopeful that the direction we're going, even regardless of what we're seeing, because those moments of connectivity, those moments of brilliance are really so important. And, there's been a lot of changes in the healthcare. There's been a lot of changes in the way that these organizations are showing up. And, at the beginning of the year, beginning of when this administration came in, and I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to bring them to the dinner table, but
sure.
everybody knows who I'm talking about, the nameless one. After that happened, clients that I was working with retracted and they said, we don't know what we're going to be able to spend money on. We don't know. I had a contract that was in the works for a major mental health provider here in Phoenix, and they retracted. They still haven't felt comfortable investing in non
Mm.
pharmaceutical interventions. It's really a challenging time, but yet, in the wake of that, two donors, friends of mine, high earners, one of them, a retired guy, actually sent me donations. And now I'm able to supplement the work that I was doing because I've always been a person who's been paid by the institutions. I've always been a person that's gone in and, worked the language. Hey, this is a peer support model. This is evidence based. This is we're working inside of your world. Like I'm coming in here as a practitioner of sound medicine. I'm coming in here as a person that is involved in the mental health conversation. There may be shamanic spirituality that's being done, but I'm going to speak your language.
Right.
I'm going to talk to you in reference points that you can articulate and metabolize. And in doing that, I've been fortunate enough to be, one of the most sought after drum circle facilitation companies in Arizona, if not the
Yeah.
United States. I
Yeah.
mean, we've done over 5,000 of these
Wow.
wellness-based events.
Incredible.
And yeah, 2017. When was the lockdowns? 2020, 2019? The year before the
2019,
lock,
2020.
yeah,
Yeah. So 2019
2020.
was the year
Okay, so
before. Yeah.
yeah, so 2019 was our record year, and we did 587 that
Wow.
year.
Wow.
587. And people are thinking, well, how could you do more than one a day? Well,
Yeah.
some of these institutions, Michael, they have multiple different units.
Yep.
So they'll have a behavioral unit, they'll have an assisted living, a skilled nursing, an independent living, and we would go sometimes do five in one day in one hospital. Uh, Come home and have to take our clothes off in the garage because
Wow.
these places literally smell.
Yeah.
We're living in that environment so that we can bring the goodness of the power of group drumming.
Yeah.
And yeah, am I manipulating the energy? I'm working with a torrent field. I'm working with energetic connection to Mother Earth. I'm working in another dimension when I go into these places. I'm using that spiritual knowing that I'm blessed with to really create shifts. And in doing that, I have been able to at times unpack what's really going on to these clinicians and share with them, what I'm seeing spiritually. For instance, I was doing a bereavement camp with a group of psychiatrists and psychologists, and it was a bereavement camp for young people. And the day before this event, I met with this coach, and we all should have people coaching us, everybody. When you were a kid, you went to the little league coach and you got, instructions on how to swing the bat. Well, we all need coaches and mentors in our life. And this woman, she said to me, I hear you talk about psychosocial outcomes and social emotional learning, and, what's really going on? And I told her what I see in the circles energetically. And she said, "Well, why aren't you telling them that?" And I said, "Do you think that they're ready for that?" You know? And but she said, "You need to start telling the clinicians what's really going on." So the next day I came in with that assertion. And this woman comes up to me, and she's an 80-year-old grandma that's been working in, social work her entire life, doing this
Wow.
bereavement camp, and is at the end of her years, literally, physically. And she grabs me by the arms and she says, "I don't know how you do it, but every time you come here, you say the exact words that we have been struggling to say." And and when she grabbed me like that, Michael, this was after the session, and I said to her, "What was going on with that blonde-haired boy that was next to Karen, the psychiatrist?" And she just, tears get in her eyes, and she goes,
Mm.
"That's who I'm talking about."
Oh,
And she said, "Okay, we were at a retreat center where they had a labyrinth. This is free to the kids, by the way. And they're walking the labyrinth praying for this young man.
mm.
This young man hadn't said anything the entire 3 days of the retreat in association with the loss of his loved one. I said, I seen a skull on that young man. I seen a skull face, like a Day of the Dead skull face, as I was playing the gong. And I said, I want to know what's going on with him." And she said, with tears in her eyes, "He was at a Motel 6. His mom went into the bathroom and did fentanyl, came back, laid down next to him, and died.
Oh
He
my
woke up
gosh.
with his mom
Oh,
dead next to him."
oh my gosh. Oh my
And he had
gosh.
not been able to grieve that. They were homeless. She was hustling. I mean, it was like literally my life as a kid,
Yeah.
in this young man. And I went in there and I talked about how my mom overdosed on cocaine, and I shared that with the group. And this is all dropping, spirit led, pure moments of connection. I had no
Aho.
idea
Aho.
what this young man
Aho.
had gone through. None,
Right.
none.
Right.
But spirit did. And I
Yeah.
was just living in obedience to that. And
Yeah.
the psychiatrist says that he had one of the key indicators of grief while I was playing the gong. He grabbed her by the arm and said, "I just heard my mom's voice in that gong. My mom's
Ooh.
here with me."
Oh, wow.
You,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, man. And in that moment, something broke in him.
Mm.
Something broke, and it started that process of healing and coming into relationship with that part of himself. And, you know, the research that's been done on these practices is so minuscule to the hockey stick approach of mindfulness. We have had millions, potentially billions of dollars put aside for research on yoga and Tai Chi and these other great forms of wellness. And I'm not saying anything about those forms of wellness. I'm saying
Mm.
that those are legitimate practices. I was at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine conference, and I was set aside to be a speaker. Andrew Weil is the founder of integrative medicine in North America. He started the first school. And there was a keynote that was speaking, and he had this tree in front of the audience, a video presentation. And it showed all these branches of mindfulness and research that have been done. And I looked at that tree and I said, there's not a branch to drumming.
Yeah.
Oh, is this, I'm at the number one group in integrative medicine. This man is the one of the best lecturers in the world, and I'm not going to name him because I don't want to call him out. But I stood up in front of this group of highly educated doctors, and I introduced myself in my traditional language, and I said, in our tradition, we're taught that the word for healer and the word for singer are synonymous. And I was just wondering why your tree doesn't have a branch to drumming. And there was a hush in that room of over 500 doctors.
I love it.
And
I love it.
no one knew why there wasn't one. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that there's still a sense of disconnect from the indigenous wisdom. I mean, this is the oldest mind body wellness activity. This predates any of these
Aho.
mindful
Aho.
mindful
Yeah.
practices that we've
Yeah.
been studying. And I've been on a mission to be that voice in healthcare, to be a person who can say that there are tools that we as people that are involved in the conversation need. And one of those tools is the practice of group drumming. You know, Andrew Weil said some really great words that at the center, they do honor the drum. It is a part of their practice. He was very candid about that and was wondering actually why it wasn't on his tree as well.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I seen him with this hockey stick. You know, it's like the first mindful research paper done in the 70s, and then it went to 2000. I think it was 24 or something when we did the last conference, and it was like a hockey stick, of
Right.
research dollars, and still the evidence that or the peer support, or I'm sorry, peer reviewed documented research on group drumming is so limited.
Yeah.
It's very limited, and we need more voices that are going to champion and fund these research projects that are going to be able to get out there and say, hey, you know what? I'm one of the high earners that's going to allocate some of my tax benefits that I've received this year to research because I know that there's a deficit in research of non pharmaceutical interventions. And we need those voices. So if you're one of those high earners that's listening to this, I'm challenging you right now, reach out to Drumming Sounds because I've got a full on grant ready for you.
Awesome.
I want your
Awesome.
organization to look at it. I've got a group at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine at the U of A that has the tools to do, the cortisol counts. I've got a letter from the Arizona Department of Correction saying we can go in there and do a study with folks that are incarcerated, living with substance use disorder and other mental health concerns. The bones of this thing are there.
That's
So
beautiful.
let's do it,
Beautiful.
huh? Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Beautiful, Andrew. Thank you for all of that. And the phrase that sticks with me throughout what you shared was that, I always love the phrase that sobriety is not the opposite of addiction, connection is. And
Oh
everything you said,
man.
so we're talking about relationship to other people,
Wow.
relationship to the drum, relationship to the earth, relationship to nature, relationship to all our relations. And everything you just shared to me kind of distills into that message that we have to have something to replace the density of the addiction with. And
Mhm.
what you do so well is you replace it with connection to the heart, connection to the earth, connection to the drum. And 100%, I don't know if you ever read Mickey Hart's Drumming at the Edge of Magic. He was the Grateful Dead drummer. And
One
when,
of the best books.
oh
Love
my
that
God,
book.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I grew up as a drummer, and there is something so we're talking tens of
Campbell was in
thousands of
that too,
years.
didn't he help
Yes,
him write it? Yeah,
yes, he
Joseph
did.
Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we're talking about the first instrument outside of the voice, then the drum, then
Yep.
probably rattles and the flute. And
Hmm.
so, mindfulness with Buddhism is a couple, 2,500 years old. We're talking about, the tens of thousands of years, maybe 100, maybe 150,000 years. I mean, so our species has been drumming in a circle together to get through tough times. And I love that you're continuing to do that, my friend. So share share with us a little bit about, you have a workshop coming up in March, right, in Phoenix. Tell us a little bit about that, and also for how people can get in touch with you, find out more about your work and what you're doing, and get your book, Sacred Seven.
For sure. So we're doing a retreat style training, March 13th through the 16th in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, 30 minutes from the Phoenix airport. It's at the Franciscan Renewal Center, which is this really cool uh, monastery where they're literally walking around in
Wow.
their
The Franciscan
monk
monks.
outfits.
I
Yeah,
love it. I love
they
it.
bless our drums every time we're there.
Wow.
It's pretty epic. It's very beautiful facility, but really the transformation that's going to happen for the participant is that key touch point of these earth-based wisdoms, learning the practice of group drumming in a way that is based around connection and spirituality, based around the technologies of our ancestors without the idea of cultural appropriation, because I'm here to teach people how to utilize these technologies for their everyday life. I'm here to help them understand that they have an opportunity to relate to the drum. And there's a practice of inclusive drumming that dates back to post colonial North America in the sweet place of Congo Square in New Orleans, where Native
Mm,
Americans, Africans, and Europeans came together to make music. In fact, all of the plantations around New Orleans banned drumming, except one Frenchman who said, "You can come to my property and drum." And he
wow.
created a place where folks could sell goods to buy themselves out of slavery. They could come together and worship the way that they wanted to worship. And you had this alchemy of the African, the native, and the European ally coming together to celebrate freedom. And that was the foundation for jazz, blues, R&B, gospel, rock and roll, hip hop. We as a country are in a place in our timeline where diversity, inclusion, and equity is under attack. And
Aho.
yet, if we really look at the history of how we have come together on Fat Tuesday, by the way, when we're recording this,
That's right. It is Fat Tuesday. Oh wow,
honoring
that's
Mardi
great.
Gras,
And
right?
it's also the Chinese New Year today too.
It is. It's a big
Yeah,
day
that's
for
a
us.
big
You know, we're
day.
stepping into the horse, baby. Let's
That's
go.
it.
Let's
That's
go.
it. Fire horse.
So yeah, the fire horse. I actually the mailbox where I have my business. It's all Chinese that own the mailbox facility, and I went in there and I was the only person in line that wished them Happy New Year.
Oh,
So
I love
I
it. I
felt
love
pretty
it.
good about
That's
that.
great.
But this is the space of cultural identity that I like to reference in the heritage of the contemporary drum circle, where it first evolved from,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of forms of ethnocentric drumming. I mean, I'm a skilled West African player. I can play Latin, I can play Middle Eastern, I can play Native American drumming. All of those are beautiful aspects of traditional drumming. Yet there's a place inside of our contemporary culture for group drumming as well, where everyone can feel like they're a part of the heartbeat of Mother Earth.
Aho.
And the only truly American instrument, people, we're not taught this in school, is the jazz drum kit. I mean, where would we be without the drum kit? We
Yep.
wouldn't have rock and roll. We wouldn't have all these great movements that
Yep.
have totally changed the world and brought forward peace.
Yep.
Uh, it's a history that is, like I said, under attack today, and we are a part of that movement of inclusivity. And a person who comes to our training, there was a woman that came to our retreat and she was a double masker, you know, hadn't been out of her house in months,
Mm.
heavily hooked on pharmaceuticals and cannabis, and had gained a bunch of weight. She came to our training after a long conversation from Monica. She ended up going home, got a new job, started doing improv comedy,
Wow.
ended up losing
Wow.
200 pounds.
Wow.
200 pounds of weight, traveled to Italy for a drum circle facilitators conference on her own,
Wow.
started
Wow.
her own business facilitating drum circles. And this is all within a 3 year span. And last year, okay, last year, I got a call saying that she had passed. And I was
Mm.
the only person that she told that she had a brain condition. She didn't tell any of her
Oh
family,
my
any of her
gosh.
friends.
Oh my gosh.
But I got to see in her the witness that I've seen in myself of what a practice of drumming can do for a person, how it can lead to health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. I mean, this foundational part of the human experience, if it isn't expressed, it will yearn for expression. And in that yearning,
Oh.
causality of behaviors will manifest.
Yep.
So if you're a person that's dealing with the timeline that we all are, and you're witnessing what's going on in the stress in your body, and you're witnessing what's going on in the stress in your family, take the time to invest in yourself. Come on out. There's a few tickets left for double rooms. You can room with the person who's going to be your next best friend. You're going to drum for 3 days, reset the nervous system, sound medicine, movement, prayerful intention. Every morning we open up with a smudge and a prayer and deep connection. and it's, less than $1,000, food included. It's just a really great investment in yourself. So, go to Drumming Sounds. We're on Facebook. Check us out. Love to share that with you. I'm also doing an educational webinar once a week. And you can get connected with that on Facebook as well. It's also on Instagram and all the other channels, but Facebook is where our events are primarily, on our Drumming Sounds page. It's the
Great.
easiest for us. But I'm
And
doing
I'll
an
put
educational webinar
yeah, and
where
I'll
I'm
put
really
link.
on. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'll put links
Yeah,
in the in our notes, and make sure there's a link to your Facebook page, and because I think you guys have a YouTube page as well, and then there's
yeah, we got a
also the
YouTube
drumming
channel as
sounds.
well. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can put a link into the Sacred Seven because you've got your really nice video on that website too. We can just go to
Yeah, the
that.
Sacred Seven, they can get a free copy of my book, Seven Guided Imagery Meditations. And I'm also available for one on one coaching with that technology. And we really didn't talk about that effectively. I mean, we touched
Yeah,
on it, but the idea of ceremonial introduction that the listener got to hear to at the beginning is really the foundational approach of earth based wisdom.
yeah,
Shamanic practitioners around the world know this. Earth based wisdom, guardians know this, yet it's so pragmatic that it's oftentimes overlooked. And
yes,
many traditional practitioners don't even teach it. But
yes,
I witnessed the power of ceremonial introduction, and the question arose in my mind, well, what does that mean to be a child, to be a grandchild, to be of the earth? And that led me to writing my first book, which is really about putting your foundation down.
yeah,
When you start to work with energy, when you start to work with spirituality, how are you grounded into this experience? And that's what the Sacred Seven is. You can get a free copy of that book, or if you'd like to purchase one, you can purchase them on Amazon. And yeah, just love to connect with you guys, and
yeah.
be here to build community.
Aho, Andrew, it's just such a joy to have you here, and I just can't thank you enough. And there is something about um, well, and so yeah, I just wanted to share this, something I had kind of uh, put together to kind of bring us into an ending, and then maybe you can prayer us out. But the sense of authenticity that you bring, and in your work, and there's so many teachers out there. I come from a Jungian background, and the whole issue of the shadow and not honoring our shadow, which is not honoring our humanity, really, right? And gosh, we see this all the time out there, and kind of that I think until we own our story, and for the listeners out there, I love the Minkwas native saying, "The soul would have no rainbow if the eyes had no tears." And I'm always moved by your authenticity, your vulnerability, because to me that is my teacher, Chief Bobby John Bearhart, who taught me the two big phrases for him were uh, "walk in beauty," and also "we must never stop dancing." And you just lived both of those things so beautifully. So before we part, I want to offer a simple blessing, not as an ending but as a way of carrying this conversation back into our lives. To those listening or walking a path of recovery or grief or quiet longing, may you remember that you're not broken, only remembering something deeper, something more ancient, and may the rhythm of your own breath and the drum bring you home. To the ancestors who walked before us, whose songs and prayers will move through our blood and bones, we thank you for not giving up on us, even when we forget how to listen. To the directions, the elements, the seen and the unseen helpers, thank you for holding us while we learn how to stay. And Andrew, thank you for walking this path with humility, for tending the fire without claiming ownership of the flame, and for reminding us that healing is not something we do alone, it's something we remember together. May we leave this space a little more rooted, a little more listening, a little more willing to live a prayerful life, not perfectly, but faithfully. And may whatever rhythm is needed next, silence or sound, meet you exactly where we are, where you are. So I would love for you to close us out, Andrew, with a short prayer.
Creator, I thank you for the honor of being here to share and to be a part of this circle. I thank you for all those that are gathered here to witness the power of relationship and to be witnesses of that which is coming forward in this time. Thank you for calling us to this meeting place and for allowing that which is needed to be shared to be shared. and for calling those that are in need of feeling the compassion and love of your sweet embrace to know that they can warm themselves at this sacred place. We thank you for those that are struggling right now, and we pray that we would be able to be a witness to them as well. Beauty above, beauty below, beauty beside, beauty in front, beauty behind, beauty within. I am, we are made beautiful again. Aho.
Aho. Andrew, thank you again. Such a joy to have you here. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of The Other Side of Things. And I really look forward to seeing you next time. Be well, take good care, and find your groove. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to The Other Side of Things. I've been your host and guide, Dr. Michael DeMaria. You can find out more about my work at michaeldemaria.com. Explore the books, music, and online programs and films. And we'll see you next time on The Other Side.